Welcome to the Decent People Podcast, a production of Decentral Media, where we're committed to telling the stories of the founders, builders, and visionaries who are creating a new decentralized economy and internet experience. You guys know it as Web3 or blockchain, and we're going to bring you the smartest and most interesting people in the space for intimate conversations that reveal their background, how they got into crypto in the first place, and what they're doing today to make a decentralized future a reality. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to check out our site at decentral.io. Now, to the show. Hi, welcome to the latest episode of Decent People. I'm your host, Matt Leising, and today I'm joined by Doug Petkanics, co-founder of Livepeer, which is a peer-to-peer video streaming service. Doug has a long history in the software world where he's battled giants like Apple and Google. And he's been in Web3 now for about 6 years, going back to 2016, which basically makes him a dinosaur. Hey, Doug, how you doing?
Hey, really good. Thanks so much for having me today. It's the first time I've been called a dinosaur in a while, so badge of honor, I guess.
I figure your youthful appearance can handle it. So, yeah. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on. I wanted to just start with a sort of a big topic that's going on right now, or it could be a big topic, but it's it's a peer-to-peer issue, which you guys are doing at Livepeer, but it's a little more nefarious, and it's the Ontario regulators have singled out some tweets that Brian Armstrong of Coinbase and Jesse Powell of Kraken made, where the police have been notified that they might be trying to get people to subvert local laws about having a cryptocurrency wallet that is your own, that's self-hosted. So that's kind of striking to me, and sort of like in the much broader context, gets to why peer-to-peer is such an important cornerstone of crypto. And now you've got regulators here who are basically alerting the cops to people who are trying to advocate for folks to be in control of their own wallet, to have their own keys, to have their own coins. So I don't know if you saw that, but I wondered if you had any thoughts on it, and just like how it kind of maybe dovetails into why you guys, got into Livepeer in the first place.
Yeah, thanks for surfacing that. I mean, it's incredibly concerning, right? It's something we should all, take a second to think about and take a look at what's really going on here. It's you have people who are advocating for using tools like cryptography in order to provide for your own privacy and freedom to communicate securely, and in this case, your freedom to control your own wealth and assets and transact with other parties. And you have governments that people suspected were democratic and trying to preserve these freedoms, actually taking these seemingly more authoritarian positions where they're saying, no, it's actually our role to dictate what freedoms you have in terms of your ability to communicate privately and securely, or to control your own assets and transact privately and securely. And that's really concerning. What's that mean about what we thought we knew about our leaders, our governments? And if it can happen there in Canada, it can happen anywhere. So I think this is a real eye-opening moment, right?
Yeah, and it's also been dispiriting to see that Kraken and Coinbase basically don't have any option here. When the Ontario regulators and the police come knocking, they've both said that they are reluctantly complying with it. So it's just the rhetoric is more than rhetoric now. It seems like things are ramping up both in Canada and in the United States, with regulators really trying to put their stamp on this market, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's one thing to do business in a jurisdiction where, of course, you typically have to comply with the local laws and regulations, as Coinbase or Kraken will do in Ontario, as they should do, right? But it's another thing to just advocate for using an open and freely available technology based on mathematics, and then to be accused of that being subversive is the eye-opening moment, right? So I think tying this back to kind of the whole Web3 movement and some of why we're building these technologies in the first place, and why we work on Livepeer, which is an open video infrastructure for the world, right? It's the notion that you can enable these technology primitives that are open access, that let developers build what they want, be in control of their own economic outcomes, and not be subject to the whims of building on a single centralized big tech platform that has their own objectives and monetization. And
yeah, like in
in
your
some
case,
cases, even
like there's centralized service there, like Amazon Web Services or the Apple App Store that can get in the way. And then I guess with the Ontario example, it's a centralized government service, that can come in and basically say, we're going to freeze your accounts because we don't like what you're doing. So much harder to get around the centralized government aspect, I think, right now. But I think what you guys are doing to get around the kind of gatekeeping centralized forces and some of like video sharing is great.
Thanks. And yeah, I think, video is such an important part of the world economy. It's how we communicate with one another. We're on video right now, right? It's how we learn. It's how we get educated. It's how we actually, many people participate and monetize their time over video, right? So I think people should have the freedom to do that. What we're building enables people to build those video experiences that create those opportunities in a cost-effective and scalable and reliable way. I think, it's not fully about censorship resistance. In fact, I think when it comes to live video and just enabling anything to be broadcast in a completely censorship resistant way actually leads to some more harm than good that it might cause in many cases. So it's important we build these tools responsibly, so those operating on these networks have choice about what they're contributing to or what they distribute. But at the same time, kind of base technology choice needs to be open, needs to exist, needs to be accessible for all. And I think open source software plus open infrastructure networks are a really powerful combination there. I'm happy to talk more about.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree with you. Let's go back a little bit, but about you, like where did you grow up, and what were you like as a kid? Were you always into computers? Is this something? Are you surprised that you are where you are now?
Yeah, I grew up in New Jersey, outside New York City, in America, right? I typical kid in the suburb, played sports, liked school, and got into computers at a pretty early age. I was always kind of building websites and learning to program, and was super fortunate that my school district happened to have an early computer science program, so I got exposed to that early. I think like many kids, I made video game websites and wanted to make games, and that's kind of what drew me into it. So it's not a surprise that I kind of followed that builder mentality into a computer science degree, and ultimately kind of software focused entrepreneurship and always building. So I've worked on many startups over the years, and like you said, fought some battles against kind of building against and being subject to the whims of the big tech gatekeepers. And was so happy to kind of discover blockchain technology as a development platform back in 2016.
Yeah. Help us out. Like what were you building around in the video game world? What era were you in there? Like, I guess in like high school, what kind of games and stuff were you into?
Yeah. What I was actually doing is I would create kind of online communities and fan type sites for some of the popular games. I like some sports games, NHL 2001 or the baseball game, or even I think I had the domain like SimCity4000.com, as if like that was going to be the next hit in the franchise or something. But what was really powerful was that I saw kind of in the early days of the internet how powerful it was to like organize a community around these things that would enhance everyone's experience. So take a sports game where the default experience is you just play against the computer till the end of time, and that's it. But when you create a community, all of a sudden you have the ability to like play people around the world, to form a league, to actually artists would contribute expansion packs and upgrades to the uniforms. And it was actually like being part of the forums and the community that created this whole new element of excitement around these games. And the game publishers were nice enough not to shut me down and, considered me a good partner actor in the ecosystem. But it was a good foray into entrepreneurship after school when you're learning to program and build a website.
And were your parents supportive of this? Were they like in science or computer science or anything like that?
They were super supportive. They were not, they were not in computer science, but they, were entrepreneurial, and I got to see my mom, build a business in our library in our house, and that was, really inspirational to me. So, super supportive parents in all my endeavors, for better or for worse. And I think that probably gave me the that kind of entrepreneurial confidence or naivety where you say, oh, this thing sounds really hard, but like, yeah, I can go for it. Like, we can go for it and try and build it. And, you haven't been beaten down by the world in terms of people telling you can't.
Yeah, man, believe me, I'm in the startup mode right now, and I hear you 100%. I wish I had known what I was getting into.
There's not a lot. There's only like, the victories are few and far between, right? So you have to be excited to do the building and go through the journey.
For sure. And yeah, so, and then did that, like, community building on the internet, like, bleed you more into this computer science is kind of what you knew what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to do computer science. College computer science is totally different than building websites in high school. It becomes research oriented and theoretical. And I actually think that led me to like a little bit of a delay on my entrepreneurial journey, a little bit, for better or for worse, right? Like, I was in college at the time that Zuckerberg built and launched Facebook, right? It was the same year as me in school. And so, where he was hacking around with PHP, building web apps, creating social networks, I was like, oh, I'm doing this major, this heads down kind of research oriented, learn the fundamentals, but you're not like building a creative output, right? And that led me into kind of a traditional job straight out of school, where I learned a lot about building and architecting big systems, but it wasn't long before, that entrepreneurial itch kicked back in, and I realized I was actually happiest when I was like working on my own website and community back in high school, right? What's it mean to do this, to do a startup before, the internet was flooded with resources and there were huge startup communities in all sorts of cities. But my entry point to that was I was really fortunate to join a Y Combinator startup right as they were admitted into Y Combinator, and I got to tag along. The YC founders were really generous and kind of letting me tag along, and kind of got the startup in a box exposure that Y Combinator gave you back in 2008.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I know the feeling of putting something on hold, for like a stable job. It's powerful, especially if your parents are kind of pushing for one thing or the other. I was actually headed to medical school before I said, nah, screw that. I always wanted to be a writer. And so that kind of, waylaid me a little bit. And I've always wondered what it would be like if I'd just gone through college knowing that I was going to be a writer. So tell us a little bit now about where you're getting to, where you're in the startup world, and you're creating things. And this is around, I think, 2012-ish. Is that when you start, like, one of your first startups?
The first startup that I founded with Jordan Cooper and then Eric Tang, who's still my partner to this day on Livepeer, was called Hyperpublic. It was around 2010. We were in New York City, just as the New York kind of seed ecosystem was beginning to flourish and boom. And we built a data platform. We built a local data platform, kind of organizing the world's local information. So where are businesses? What types of restaurants exist at what points? What's on their menu? What are they selling? Organizing.
You were going like knocking door to door, right, on businesses and saying, hey, I want to put you on my website.
We were building technology that collected all that information for us. So we recognized through scalable technology, we could build and organize the world's local information rather than having to call, go door to door, right? And so this was at a time when local apps were just beginning to exist. GPS devices were just put in cell phones. And so apps like Yelp and Foursquare and Uber and these sorts of things that kind of picked up your GPS and showed you what's around you were just beginning to come on. And our platform was the sort of thing that could power that. So it was a good idea. It was very useful at the right time. And, we had a good outcome there. And we got acquired by one of our customers, Groupon, who was kind of a fast growing startup at the time and became their local data team. So we got to see the good, positive arc of entrepreneurship and kind of making data open and available to developers that wanted to build on it. And that was 2012 when that ended. And then in 2013, we started this long, hard journey that we learned some hard lessons about relying on the big tech platforms as well.
And that was with Wildcard, right?
Correct. So, the short version of this story is that, around this era, we saw everything's going to shift to mobile. Everything from desktop web is going to shift onto mobile. But on mobile, all this content, these videos, these articles, these products that people are browsing and buying, it's not going to be consumed in the web browser. It's going to be consumed inside of Twitter and Facebook and Google search results and Pinterest and these popular social apps, right? And those apps recognized it and they created open APIs where they said, oh, you can structure your articles and videos and products to display really nicely in here, right?
Free content, right?
Facebook instant articles and Google accelerated mobile pages and Pinterest rich pins and embedded Twitter cards and stuff. And so we built this whole platform that could help websites, push that content in there. And then over time, those big tech companies started to close their APIs or not release the features they communicated they would, or not let you customize your content. And it turns out they went directly to the publishers themselves and kind of didn't let us, be in the middle and provide tools and services. And everything that we thought would happen happened, but the big tech platforms kind of allowed developers to seed their ecosystems, but then changed the rules of the game and took the bigger piece of the pie for themselves. And of course they would look at how they've behaved in the past and how they're behaving now and what their incentives are. It's an opportunity for them to maximize their profits, but it's a lesson that we learned the hard way, which is don't put your business, your future in the hands of what you think is a kind of benefactory on the big tech ecosystem.
That's where the centralization risk lies.
Absolutely. I mean, they had total centralized gatekeeping control of how you exist in their ecosystem. Similarly, when we saw, oh, we can't actually exist in their ecosystems, we need our own application. We built and released a great one, tens of thousands of users, one of Apple's apps of the year. And then all of a sudden we faced Apple holding our app out of the App Store for, our updates out of the App Store for months on end without explanation, because we were, I don't even know why, they never even communicated the right reason, something to do with commerce. And it was like, oh yeah, they're actually like another gatekeeper that controls our future. And it's just like, screw this, never again do we want to be relying on the benevolence of these big tech platforms. We want to build on open source software, open systems, open networks. And lo and behold, 2016, Ethereum had just launched and this thing called the DAO was gaining attention. And that was a real eye-opening moment for us.
Yeah, I mean, what entrepreneur wants to say, Mother, may I, to someone else to allow them to conduct their business? But yet here we are with that enormous power in all these big tech companies. And I've written about it in many different forms, but it definitely is very much a guiding principle of the Web3 sort of Ethereum folks to just create an alternative for that system. I don't think anybody's thinking that they're going to replace Wall Street or replace, internet commerce, but it does give people an alternative. And so, yeah, tell me about now you're into Ethereum and you start diving in, and not only is it mostly decentralized peer-to-peer, but there's also a native economic element to it as well, right? And that sort of blew your mind.
That's absolutely right. I mean, there's the two contributing factors. One, open development platform, great, that's table stakes, that's what we wanted. But the light bulb moment was, now you can embed economic incentives into open source software in a way that actually gets people to contribute to that software, to run that software globally, to form networks. And most powerfully, like they all participate in the upside as those networks get used because they become owners in these networks as well. Like that was so cool, such a game-changing new idea that was never before possible. And it actually is, as a developer that kind of used and appreciated open source, but never really understood, who's maintaining this? Why are people contributing to it? Why do these communities form? What's the incentive there? Now, all of a sudden, you could see a very direct line to like, wow, like open source software actually can be the best software in the world because you can have a community of thousands of people that actually benefit from its growing adoption while still allowing it to be open source. And of course, you have to get all the incentives right and these networks, and there has to be true utility there.
Well, yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. So
yeah.
So why don't you explain what Livepeer is and how it, uses a decentralized network to achieve its goals, and then maybe you could talk about your token and how that is so integral to the incentivization of your users.
Sure, we're gonna go on a little video journey or detour because Livepeer is a video infrastructure. So what's that mean? It means that people building video apps, things that look like Twitch or YouTube or TikTok, need software and infrastructure to power that video streaming. You have to do compute on video to encode it into different formats. You have to distribute it around the world to people in real time. So and deliver it in high quality. And that places a tremendous load on internet infrastructure. Video is 80% of the bandwidth on the internet.
Yeah,
right.
And so 80%.
Yep. And because it's challenging to do video at scale, and you need all these servers standing by around the world at any given moment, a lot of times the only option are the big cloud providers. You use AWS, you use Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure as your video infrastructure if you're doing video at scale. Those are very expensive. It's very expensive for them to operate and have tons of servers standing by just ready to receive live video in case someone starts a stream. And so the Livepeer network is an open alternative. It's anyone with idle computing capacity around the world can run Livepeer node software, can form this infrastructure network for video streaming, and they can, earn the money that developers pay in order to use a video infrastructure. But if you follow me for a minute here, I can tell you like who's providing the supply, why can it be cost effective? I think it's really interesting, and it applies not just to video, but other Web3 services as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to jump in, so to change the raw video that people are uploading into something that can go out to any device on different networks at the same quality, it's called transcoding, right?
That's right.
And
that's right.
Like a service like AWS, well, I think we'll charge, you said $3 an hour?
Yep. Yeah. If you're using a hosted cloud service, Amazon has a couple of products. Vimeo has a product. Mux.com has a product. Brightcode, right? You're typically looking at, for a live stream, like $3 an hour per stream or up, right? Yeah. And so if you're building something that looks like Twitch and you're lucky enough to have 1,000 people that are using it at once to stream, to create content, that's $3,000 an hour. That's what's that, 72,000 bucks a day or millions of dollars a month just for infrastructure, right?
Yeah, and that's a hell of a bill that startup has to foot. So now Livepeer comes through and using a distributed network with, where there's excess capacity, like maybe it's cryptocurrency miners or just anybody who sets up a node, you're now able to do that transcoding for something like 30 cents an hour, right?
Yeah, so we run a kind of gateway service and kind of have a list price to use it at 30 cents an hour. We're running a bunch of kind of global ingest nodes and handling all the scaling. So that's kind of the price that we charge for that entry point. So you see kind of a 10x disruption versus a traditional cloud service. The supply side of the network, Livepeer network is an open marketplace. Anyone with these servers can charge whatever they want to encode the video. And you mentioned cryptocurrency miners being a good source of this supply. It's really interesting. People mining Ethereum or other GPU coins have thousands of these GPUs. There's millions deployed around the world that are mining cryptocurrency. Those GPUs happen to have video encoding chips on them that sit there doing nothing. They can't hash crypto, so they're just sitting there idle. So Livepeer enables them to encode video on Livepeer without disrupting their crypto mining.
Wow.
And so we tap into this global supply. And so when you look at the economics for them, encoding video, an hour of video using that chip on their GPU, the bandwidth plus electricity is like a couple cents, probably less than 2 cents. And so for them, it's like, okay, their cost is 2 cents. Cloud providers are charging $3. What do they want to charge on this network to make a little bit of extra money with no opportunity cost? And that's why
that's really interesting.
be so disruptive.
Yeah, that's really interesting that all these miners are using graphics processing units, right? But I didn't know that they had idle video encoding capacity as well. That's really cool.
Yep, because that's what a lot of the GPUs were made for, being able to process video, but also do this general purpose compute on the CUDA cores. And so that's great. It's this huge abundant supply that's out there, and that's why the Livepeer network has tens of thousands of these GPUs available that are just looking for whatever additional revenue they can get, right?
Yeah, and what's your growth been like? Maybe like from a year ago to now. How are you seeing things on the network?
Yeah, the metric that we've been looking at have been how many minutes of video were transcoded per week. And a year ago, we were probably around 200,000 to 300,000 minutes of video per week. Over the course of the year, that grew, and we hit the 1 million minute milestone, 8 months ago, and the 2 million minute milestone a couple months ago, and now we're doing between 2.5 and 3 million minutes of 2.5 and 3 million minutes of video encoded per week.
Yeah.
So that's been good. It's good to see that growth, right? I think it's a lot of that comes from kind of traditional kind of user-generated content creator economy applications that are letting tens or hundreds of users stream at once and need a cost-effective infrastructure to do this. I'm excited about an area that doesn't represent a ton of minutes yet, but I think is going to unlock huge potential, which is Web3 enabled video apps, things that have Web3 kind of decentralized primitives baked in, things like NFT minting and token gated access to streaming and crypto native monetization mechanisms. I think we haven't seen those lead to millions of minutes of usage yet, but I think the next TikTok scale app is likely to leverage those primitives and hopefully be built on Livepeer.
Yeah, cool. And then let's jump in here and explain how your token works and why that's an incentive for people, and just like how Ethereum, basically it's a token built on the Ethereum blockchain, and just kind of like how that all fits together.
Sure. So Livepeer launched almost 4 years ago on Ethereum's mainnet. So we were one of the first kind of utility-based protocols to go live. I described the Livepeer token as a work token, which means that it's not used to pay for services on the network. You pay for services in ETH. It's used for those that want to do work on the network. These node operators, they hold the token, and for every token that they stake on the network, it kind of entitles them the opportunity to compete for an additional unit of work. So the analogy is, if you staked 1% of the tokens on the network, on your node, you would earn about 1% you'd be able to do about 1% of the work and earn 1% of the fees. And so if you believe, the total fees will grow because there's more usage, then your 1% of token would give you access to earn a growing amount of fees.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, so what to do? It provides a security deposit. And then the issuance of these tokens actually create a great incentive for bootstrapping the network. So when you stake and are standing by to do work on this network, yes, you're earning the fees people pay, but you're also earning kind of inflationary, newly minted Livepeer token each day as part of an ongoing kind of distribution of the ownership and ability to do work on this network. And that's been really powerful, because that means that thousands of people show up to do and be ready to perform this work even before there's significant demand, and it ensures there's always more supply available than demand. And that's how you kind of solve the chicken and the egg and bootstrap the network.
Yeah, thank you for that. There has been such a lack of regulatory clarity. Are you worried that your token could ever be considered a security?
Like, in the US, there hasn't been, the crystal clear guidance that every project would want to see, so that they know how to build a token coordinated network within the kind of the realms of guidance, right? What I can say is being US based, being responsible entrepreneurs, we've taken so many steps to be really conservative from a risk perspective from the beginning as it comes to that. We've never done a public, ICO or crowd sale. The token was generated through this Merkle mining mechanism and distributed to those who are doing work on the network. Our network was functional and worked from day one because we had been running testnets with real video software for a year before launching. We weren't even listed on exchanges until this network was fully utilized and decentralized. And our team really didn't play a core role in that. So, there's always like risk and lack of clarity, but we've tried to, build responsibly and show the power of these networks providing real utility without being a speculative, for frenzy prior to these.
Yeah, that's great. What a good model you're providing. I wish more of the community would do it like that. I think that it would have a better reputation, crypto in general, if there are more folks like you.
Thanks. There's a lot of good projects out there though that have tried to build responsibly, provide.
I totally agree, but they don't get the headlines, which is kind of a shame. It's always the frauds and the folks who do it cheap and quick that seem to grab a lot of the attention. So the reason we spoke previously was that well, it was just to talk about Livepeer, but also it was right when Moxie Marlinspike kind of came out with his critique of Web3. Moxie is the founder of Signal, the encrypted messaging app. And so he had dove into some Web3 stuff like minting NFTs and trying to create decentralized apps, and kind of came back with a pretty thorough critique of it, because he thought there are still these centralized sort of bottlenecks, like OpenSea in the NFT world, or the fact that, most people aren't running a node to connect to the blockchain, so they're relying on other services that can be sort of centralized to relay their information back and forth from the blockchain to a dApp, for example. You guys are just kind of like, going the decentralized route, the peer-to-peer route natively. What do you think? Like, how do you tell people what to think about the way that they should be going about this? And are there ways that you see folks sort of trying to go halfway and that's not good enough? Or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I loved Moxie's critique because I think it was, I think it was fair, and I think it highlighted a lot of the challenges that we should confront head on as an industry. And then I also loved the industry's response to the critique, which was not just that, hey, this is something that needs to be shouted down and diminished, but it was actually like, hey, he makes really good points, but they're also looking at the way the world is today and not where we're all working to go. And by the way, here's the steps we're taking to get there. And by the way, because this critique shone light on it, all of a sudden people were like catalyzed into action to accelerate the steps of where we're going.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Like, that's like, this industry is so energetic and on it and timely, and such a fun part to be a part of, because you can see like immediate progress as a result of, one essay being published by one person. Where do we want to go? We want Web3 to be a platform for fully decentralized applications where users kind of have control and sovereignty over their data, their information, their finances, et cetera. And there's no lock-in and all these benefits, right? Getting there is really freaking challenging. It's a really hard, long build. And you can create infrastructure networks, but then if you want to onboard people to them, you still benefit a lot from, products that ease the challenges of interacting with these networks. And those products can be built and run by companies that are centralized. And that's, an intermediate step. And I don't have a problem with that. In fact, we at Livepeer have our own hosted gateway that a company runs in order to make it easy to access and leverage this network. But the key thing is that we're all motivated and aligned around like the long-term vision that the network would be accessed in a fully decentralized way. And this is just one of many companies. I don't think it's companies should go away entirely. I think it's that there can be whole ecosystems of actors that are built on and leverage these primitives like open finance, open infrastructures, shared ownership, these sorts of things. And yeah, these intermediate steps and building blocks that help us get there, I think are part of the journey.
Yeah, for sure. Nothing that I know of begins life in a decentralized fashion. It's got to be, there has to be a process to get there. But and what's fascinating is just, like you said, the incentives a lot of times are aligned here with, the economics, but also there's the ethos of it as well, that a lot of people came to this industry because they wanted to get away from gatekeepers and had experiences like you had with Wildcard. And then to kind of circle back, I guess in a really much more decentralized world, the Canadian authorities might have a much harder time trying to crack down on protests or on people, trying to fund those protests. And if everything's, hosted on 1,000 hard drives around the world, how do you take that network down? You don't. And so I guess, like you said, it's hard, but it does seem to have real world implications, and people are, seeing what the dangers are here, and that this presents the opportunity to get around those kinds of things.
Yeah, this example just showcases how important it is that these, decentralized systems and primitives exist, because without them, what happens? All communication is shut off, all freedom to transact is shut off. Like we need these systems now more than ever. And it's okay that there's some, companies that are accelerating access to it, right? Like I'd rather have 10 million people have Bitcoin because Coinbase exists than saying, oh, you can only get Bitcoin by mining it yourself and having only 10,000 people have Bitcoin, right? I think that's a better acceleration of the process towards an open financial system.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to stop it, to end. Doug, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, great speaking with you as well. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, and good luck with Livepeer.